For more than 60 years, James Bond has been chasing down villains by air, land, and sea. So what happened to all those made-for-the-movies vehicles? Lee Cowan takes us on a treasure hunt.
The 7 actors lucky enough to play 007 have found themselves in some pretty crazy contraptions. Sean Connery in something called an autogyro. George Lazenby tucked into a bobsled. Roger Moore in a microjet.
Fill her up, please.
And then, of course, there's the recurring Aston Martin. The classiest conveyance of all.
The theater that I saw it in, people stood up and applauded when they saw the car. It was like another character in the movie.
Goldfinger!
Doug Redenius was 8 years old when his dad took him to see Goldfinger. He's never forgotten that father-son moment, the first of many to follow.
Up until when my father passed away, we had seen all the Bond movies together.
Bond. James Bond.
The fictional British Secret Service agent has been featured in more than 24 films over the last 60-plus years. Some sit differently with different generations, but for Doug, they all mattered. The former postal worker started collecting, small stuff mostly. If it was Bond, he bought it. But one day, he heard about something big, really big.
The Intrepid Aircraft Carrier Museum in New York called the producers of the Bond movies in California and said, "We have a submarine of yours, do you want it back?" And they were like, "What?"
It was the 2-person submersible from For Your Eyes Only. Doug bought it for $3,000 and he stuck it in his backyard about an hour south of Chicago.
We didn't know what we were going to do with it.
Whispers about a guy who owned a Bond sub got loud enough that People magazine heard about it.
And then you started getting calls?
We started getting calls and finding other vehicles, and that's how it got started.
That yellow helicopter behind us? Well, that starred in From Russia with Love. Doug got a tip about where that was, too.
That is the best scene, when he's just sitting there holding it and he shoots it out of his
He drops it inside the cockpit.
Brace yourself. Another tip led him to the fiberglass Aston Martin that made this very slippery getaway in the living daylights. Doug found it nesting with the birds in a barn in the UK.
The ski actually still works.
No way.
It's coming at you. Is that great?
No way.
Can you swim?
Nothing, though, really beats the Lotus submarine car from The Spy Who Loved Me. The producers left it behind in the Bahamas. It sat outside on cinder blocks for years.
What you really enjoy the most is the hunt, right? The search.
For me, that's when I get a sniff of anything that might turn out that I think it's real, that's what keeps me motivated.
He's ended up rubbing elbows with Bond stars, even appearing as an extra in License to Kill.
So can you see yourself in there?
Yeah, if you know where to look.
If you want to know where to look at his collection, well, there are plenty of places, including here, at the 007 exhibit at the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, where Doug has some of his more than 40 vehicles on display. He's showing off Zhao's ice-jousting Jaguar XKR from Die Another Day. He's also got the jet boat from The World Is Not Enough.
And occasionally, to keep it in good running order, somebody has to drive it.
Gee.
Yep, that's Doug, sitting right where Pierce Brosnan did. None of these are his, technically. They belong to the Ian Fleming Foundation, a nonprofit that Doug helped found in 1992. It's named for the British novelist and car enthusiast himself, who wrote the original Bond stories back in the 50s and 60s. Money earned from Bond exhibitions, like another one underway at the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., all help support the storage and restoration for the rest of the Foundation's collection.
Literally, the roof of the shed had collapsed in on it.
That's the hook and ladder truck from View to a Kill. And that's the Kenworth, used for this unforgettable stunt in License to Kill.
Well, the padding from the movie is still here. If you hadn't spent all this time doing all this, what would have happened to all this?
Most all of it would have rotted away.
I was just gonna say, there's nothing in there, right?
Nothing in there.
Ugh.
Yet.
That, sadly, is all that's left of the 1971 Ford Mustang Mach 1 that got Sean Connery out of a pretty tight squeeze.
When you see the shape it's in now, it's sacrilegious. Just don't cut yourself.
Once they get the money, volunteers will start restoring it. But for the last 3 years, they've been too busy bringing the Foundation's newest and biggest find back to life.
It's the front half of the executive jet from Goldfinger, that first Bond film Doug saw with his dad all those years ago.
Did the Boneyard know what they had?
No, they didn't. They knew that Elvis had flown in it, and they knew that Muhammad Ali had flown in it. And I didn't tell them that James Bond had been in it until after we bought it.
That's a nice touch.
Well, that's my idea. I just thought it was great.
Doug Redenius is still that 8-year-old kid at heart.
When was the last time you drove this?
Just before it went on display.
And every once in a while, when that kid gets the better of him and he gets behind the wheel of one of his finds, he knows he's done his dad's memory proud. He also is reminded of some very good advice that Bond himself was once given.
Need I remind you, 007, that you have a license to kill, not to break the traffic laws?
I wouldn't think of it.
Good.